All right. So I am Stina Borth. I am the founder of Keymaker Services. And what we do is we guide leaders, professionals, teams, and even youth and young adults, sometimes educators for unlocking their full potential through neuroinclusion. So we emphasize on learning practices, accentuating cognitive learning styles, and focusing on positive growth. We, myself included, enjoys flexibility and embracing that complexity of life and honoring those identities that are all held within each person. Obviously, we have passion with neuroinclusion. And then outside of work, I love hiking. I just actually completed, I would say, the hardest hike of my lifetime on Mount Marcy in the Adirondacks. So that was just this last month. Other than that, I'm a fisherwoman, love playing darts, water sports, and I would say I'm a pretty awesome auntie. All right, so our mission today, we want to go through and really understand what executive functioning skills are and how to use a tool like the one that we use for assessing our baseline and what is our progress along the way in the different areas of executive function. Before we get into that, we always want to establish also our common language around neurodiversity. So I'm going to run through some definitions for us. Neurodiversity is that range, that overarching range of diversity within our nervous system. So it's the range of differences in how each individual brain functions, our behaviors and skills. This is actually regarded a normal part of a normal variation in human behavior and brain function. Then we have neurodivergent. So if we have that overarching range, we have neurodivergent on one end, and that would be a person that has an identification where their brain works a little differently than the majority of the population. And then on the other side, we have neurotypical. So neurotypical is someone that isn't identifying as being neurodivergent. It's also important to note that some of us that identify as neurotypical, we later on or with more information, we slide on that scale of neurodiversity. Maybe we don't make it down to neurodivergent status, where a lot of the diagnoses are housed. So ADHD, OCD, autism, dyslexia, dysgraphia, everything that's over here. But we do slide in between within that diversity spectrum. And then neuroinclusion, I always do these hand motions because it's helpful for retention, is including this information about our nervous system and neurodiversity and recognizing that the diversity in how folks' brains work really is an asset. And we choose to focus on that when we're cultivating inclusive environments and embracing others, but making decisions and informing it with this information. All right, so let's get started. If you haven't already, one of the great tools that we have that we partner with Psychometrics is we take our assessments and it's used through this platform of these surveys. And Psychometrics is the platform that we use, and we partner with them in providing that so it's an easy, accessible way. If you haven't yet, you should have one in your email. You would just search support@psychometrics.com to pull it up, and that would be giving you that link. After that, you want to let me know how you'd like your results. So some folks like to have a conversation. I love that because it also allows for us to facilitate how to interpret rather than just looking at a graph and knowing how to apply it. So you have a couple options. You can book a call with me. You can email and say, hey, I'd really love for you to just give me the bullets, send me an email back. Or you can do both. So we'll ask you to indicate that in a poll, or you can throw it in the chat, and then I'll note that and make sure I know how to get you those results. Let's see. Do we have that popping up? Good. Okay. It's going to let folks indicate. All right. I think we are close on that. So I know what to do once we pull them up. So for our time together, why executive functioning skills are important. So I love sharing a couple stats that really hone in on the importance of it. One, Cornell University did a study that #1 predictor of success for a leader is self-awareness. And this really lays into that self-awareness with executive functioning skills. Second, Harvard continues to have studies that are released that show that executive function is the #1 predictor of success for individuals. And that's above test scores, any kind of test scores, or socioeconomic status. So bringing those together tells me if you're a leader, if you're a professional, in whether it's your professional life or your personal, you want to use these skills and you want to develop them because they're the glue that holds everything together. You can be amazing in your field. And if you don't have executive functioning skills, it's not going to shine. It's not going to show. So what are these areas of executive function? So defining what are the different areas. We tend to focus on 11 different areas when we do trainings and work with folks. How do we know which one's important? So how do we prioritize? Because there's 11, can't do all at once. How to develop and support those executive functioning skills. We're going to give you a few tips to start with today, but of course, when you receive your individual results, you'll get a better idea of how you can communicate that out. And then our tool really is help for you to identify what areas. So of yourself, of your teams, your employees, of your youth or young adults, what areas are you going to focus on within executive function right away? So I kind of use the analogy of like, what's in the ER needs attention right now? What can wait for that appointment later? And then you prioritize in that manner. What areas of executive function are strong and which are in a deficit and need development in that support? All right. To get the most out of assessments like these, this probably is not surprising, but if you can be honest, be candid, be really, really straight up within your responses with yourself, you're going to get the best results that are going to be able to apply to your next steps. You want to take that time to reflect and analyze. So when you're first responding, you go with, just like when the instructions lead you through, like kind of go with that gut response, what it feels like. Yep, this is the one. But then also analyze and reflect on how does this apply to me? How does it apply to your team, your interactions with others? And then engage in your support system. So this could be supervisors, your partners and spouses, your mentors, your trusted colleagues, friends, anyone that you trust that could support in providing feedback so that you have that more of that holistic picture, because sometimes our view of how we are performing and interacting is not matching up. And actually, not even sometimes, a lot of times this happens. Let's be honest about it. So getting that feedback and having those open conversations with vulnerability is important. And then the last is probably the most important, taking that data that you have gathered through conversation, through feedback, through the assessments, and making a plan for action. So using that to fuel and inform what are your next steps and coming back and measuring it later. All right, so I want to walk through for those that haven't engaged in the ahead of time, the assessment is once you click on that link, this is what the page will look like. And you just enter in, all you need is your name and then your email. And so this is just an example of it, of that first page. Then there's going to be 2 pages of information with instructions of how the data is used, how you can respond, and then also just confidentiality. So you click next through those, and then you should see questions presented in this way. And the reason we have that ranking is so that you can reflect on and really see where everything's about a spectrum, everything's about a range. So, and what's interesting about when we take these assessments is the day of the week that they are taken, the week of the month of the year. We see how that changes, and really noting what the environment is when you're taking the assessment is also important for informing your next steps and how you use the information. So you'll notice that when it's sent out, it even says this is a 7-day window, because we're trying to establish, if it's the first time, this is a baseline. We're also trying to establish, hey, this was in September, and this was in what quarter, and what happened right before. So noting that, doing that reflection and logging it is important for that information as well. There's not a good or bad. So try to step out of that self-judgment, refrain from that. This is just information on how do I experience this statement in my world right now. So we're just taking a sample. All right, I'm going to just check in and see so we know what to do next with our time together. Who has completed the survey? I'm going to just throw up a poll and just ask who has completed, who needs more time, who needs some facilitation for that. Or if you don't see it in your email, if you can let me know, and I'm going to try to send it to you right now. And then once we establish that, we'll move on when we have most folks that have it. You can definitely keep working on it while we're going through the training. If I get distracting, you just turn my volume down a little bit. And then I'll just want to make sure I do note, if you start it, you don't want to, and you don't finish it, you want to keep that window open, because if you close it and come back, it makes you start at the beginning. So even if you start it today with us, leave that window open for yourself and you can come back to it a little bit later. Okay. So it looks like some folks need a little bit of time. So I'm going to just give a few minutes. Does everybody in the chat, if you haven't completed it, do you have the link? If you don't, can you direct message me or send me your email or direct message me, and I'm going to pop it in for you. Okay. Wonderful. Again, you're searching if you search psychometric, it's spelled with a C. See. SC, you're going to search, it's support@psychometrics.com. Yep. Spelled just like that. Okay. I think we have most folks. If we don't, again, just put your email in there, and when I have a minute to pause, I'll put it in so you can have it pulled up. Oh, okay. Let's see. One, and then we're going to move on. Okay. All right. I think we have everybody. If we missed you, please flag me in the chat. Okay. So we want to know, how do we optimize those cognitive abilities through executive functioning skills? Oh, I just saw it. Sorry. Here we go. Okay, that should be coming through there for you. I'll follow up as well at the end. All right. So the 11 areas that we tend to focus on within executive function is one, attention. And so attention is really that ability to focus on that the relevant information, right? Filter out distractions, maintain your concentration over time. It involves different types of attention, though. And that's something that I think a lot of us don't talk about, is that we have that selective attention, focusing on a specific task, sustaining attention, maintaining your focus over an extended period of time. Alternating attention is really one that we use a lot. So we have a main task in front of us. And let's say I'm working on something and someone comes in and says, hey, Stina, I have a quick question. Here, I'm alternating my attention to that secondary task. And then I have to redirect my attention back to the task that I had at hand. That's that alternating, coming back between those two. And then divided attention is when we are putting our attention on more than one thing at the same time. So multitasking. When we use this attention and we actually build it up as our muscle, is we're able to complete tasks efficiently and accurately, and it increases thus our productivity and performance by improving that cognitive control and management, and then being able to navigate between different environments. So transitioning from meeting to office or from task to task, those are different environments. So one tip that I love using is, and it's so simple when folks are in a common workspace or otherwise, or even if you're working from home, is noise canceling earbuds, not ear pods necessarily. You can definitely use those and you can use the music, but something that's going to buffer out some of that noise for you. And that's also kind of a signal like, okay, I'm here to zone in and focus. And then also you can do some attention training drills. There are drills all the time that can start building that pathway for that sustained, that alternating and divided attention for you. Next would be behavior management. So behavior management is not just am I behaving poorly or behaving good? It's also like, how am I managing my interactions? How am I managing my regulation? How am I managing my attention? So managing impulses, monitoring our actions, modifying to align with whatever the norms are that have been established, the agreements and expectations within the environment. So we're avoiding engagements in behaviors that are counterproductive for what our overall goal is. This is behavior management. So it involves thinking before acting, considering the consequences, positive or negative, of each action, and then adjusting those actions based on the feedback that we get, whether that's verbal or nonverbal. So this is why I ask when we enter in, can you turn your cameras on? Because it's giving me feedback of how to adjust my behavior. Do we move on to the next step of the training, or do we stay put? Just like when I ask the questions in the polls, this is me seeking that feedback, and that allows me to manage my behavior. So this also includes setting clear boundaries, recognizing what are these triggers that lead to these undesirable behaviors or experiences, and then implementing the strategies to redirect or modify our actions so that they're beneficial to us and our overall goals. Tips for this would be that you want to provide opportunities. I hear all the time is that I was just in a meeting actually last week talking about how there's not an opportunity for isolation when needed. And we think about, we want collaboration, but we also want opportunity for when we need to hyper-focus or we need to manage those distractions. Where does this person go in the work environment? How are they creating that if they're working from home so that they can have that isolation to manage their focus and be productive? And also sometimes it's about managing, especially when we are talking about neurodivergence and neurodiversity and those that identify as being neurodivergent, how are we managing the sensory input that's taking from that mental energy reservoir that they have? So it's allowing for those choices to manage that and to take those breaks so they can then go into that next meeting and perform. And then we have emotion management. So this also kind of bridges over. So emotion management is all internal. It's about managing is identifying and then understanding, how am I regulating my emotional response? So this means managing both your positive and negatives while maintaining an overall composure of a clear mind. And then when you're faced with something that elicits an emotional response, maybe it's a challenge or a situation, you're allowing for thoughts to come through and actually deliberating those actions that are not as impulsive, and then also emotionally driven responses where we're able to process those through and make those decisions without it leading us down a behavior that we don't want to engage with, or maybe it dysregulates us so that frontal lobe is shut down and we can't think clearly. So emotional management is key for productivity because it goes hand in hand. If we're activated, we start shutting down and we can't manage ourselves, and it's very difficult to communicate with others as well. So strong emotional management skills, they're crucial for maintaining those interpersonal relationships, but overall as well for productivity. So tips that we have for this is really paying attention to your nervous system. Of course, with neurodiversity and neuroinclusion, we're all about the nervous system. So using those breathing techniques, using tapping, using taking breaks and work bursts, but doing it proactively, not just reactively. So now I'm in this state of shutdown. I'm overwhelmed. I'm going to go into my tapping or my break. Do it proactively, and then you're going to be able to maintain that baseline more effectively for yourself. Flexibility is the next area. So flexibility is the ability to adapt and change, to adjust when plans are shifted, to consider alternative solutions, or when there's those changes that come in and they're unexpected. So when we're faced with changing circumstances or new information, we're able to integrate that, and then we're open to new ideas. We can shift and pivot. We can switch between tasks and perspectives. And we have this willingness to modify our plans and be capable of handling the unexpected with maybe some discomfort, but with ease. And so this is a cognitive ability. This is a flexibility that's essential for problem solving and for responding to different and dynamic environments, for maintaining that productivity, because not everything can be controlled. We don't live in a controlled environment world. And then engaging in that creative thinking that's really a necessity for resilience and for confidence, and then producing. So our tip for this area would be, when these unexpected changes happen, you want to stay present, feel that emotion that comes up, and then use some self-talk to reframe. You can do that either internally, you can do that by doing a quick jot, maybe making a note on your phone, but strategize of how you're going to move forward. Sometimes folks engage in co-processing, so they'll do that with a colleague, or they'll do it with a friend real quick, and that allows them to take it and go, hey, that's uncomfortable, and then here's my next step, and move on. Initiative is our next one. It's our fifth one. So initiative is being able to independently identify and then begin a project or a task. So you don't need that external prompting. It involves being proactive, being motivated and self-directed. It's rather than relying on external prompts or someone else for guidance, you're able to start the task, the action. So strong initiative is valuable for enhancing productivity and creating innovation. It's helpful for increasing autonomy, especially if you want that on your team or within yourself. And it's also a huge part of leadership and leadership qualities. So when you are looking at how can I amplify, how can I strengthen my initiative of executive function, you can break tasks into subtasks. Sometimes that's how you can get started in the task rather than looking at the whole picture. You can get going with the first and the second and check it off. When you check off something, you get a little dopamine hit and you get that pleasure response, and that's going to help you keep going. And then you also could use a coworker. So you can use co-working sessions to keep yourself going. And then you say, okay, here's what we need to do today. What else? And so doing that with somebody else. And also for accountability. And then you can use task management tools. One of my favorite tools of using is motion, because it allows you to really time that out, and it does it automatically. So if I am avoiding a task, it tends to keep putting it back on based on what I have put into the program to say, these are the parameters. It's more objective. So you can use a task management tool as well to get you started. But the subtasks are essential for that. 6 is metacognition. So metacognition is the awareness and understanding of one's own thought process. So it's really I like to simplify and say it's thinking about your thinking. So how am I, this is what I'm thinking, but how and why am I thinking that way? So it's asking those questions along the way to understand why those thoughts are coming that way. It involves being aware of how you learn, how you think, how you problem solve, what are your tendencies. It's also allowing you to regulate and optimize on your cognitive strategies. So when you're thinking about your thinking, it lets you assess your comprehension on whatever the information that you need to take in. And then it also allows you to identify the areas that you need to improve, adjust your approach, and then that's how you can enhance your performance. So strong metacognition, that's crucial for effective learning and critical thinking, to be able to understand, how am I going to get there? What is happening now within my thoughts? So tips for this would be to ask questions before, during, after, to monitor your progress. You're going to reflect and seek feedback. And then I cannot emphasize enough logging this, because what you're thinking now, and you are trying to recall, how was that last week? How was that last month? It's better for you to have your own notes in a log or a journal of observations to look back and start making some comparisons and using actual self-observation data, whether that is of yourself or your team, to move forward. 7 is organizational skills. So within organization skills, you are creating, you're maintaining order. It's about one's physical organization, but also digital environments, because a lot of what we do is within our digital environments, our computers and systems. It includes managing your belongings, your files, whether that's a physical file or on the computers, tasks, and going back and taking the time to reorganize when you get disorganized on a regular basis. Developing systems for tracking and for retrieving information. How can I track and retrieve the most effectively and efficiently? And really establishing that. What works for you and your brain? Is it pulling up and searching in the Finder? Or do you need to go through and click on the different and have them organized in different files that streamline within your thought process? These skills really allow you for creation and maintenance of structured environments, establishing those clear priorities. So what is it that needs to be around you so that you can be productive and really show your true abilities? If you want to develop some detailed plans, this is a skill that you're going to be leaning on. And then facilitating smooth and efficient workflows. So when we think about those that are in charge of designing those workflows for our teams, we want them to be really strong in this area of executive function so that they can put those together in an efficient way. And then task and completion productivity. Obviously, we need that organization here. So our tip for this is really, it saves you a ton of time if you, at the end of the day, go through your tasks and of what's coming up, what didn't happen today, prioritize those tasks for the next day at the end of the day, rather than coming in and trying to, okay, where was I at? And remember hours later for the next morning, or that you come in, especially if it's the end of the week and you're coming back a few days later. But take that time. It doesn't take that much. And just prioritize those before you close the computer, before you walk away, and establish where you're going to start up the next time you come back. Also, establishing a consistent workplace. So key about that physical organization. Where do you come to work? And it should be the same place or at least similar places over and over again, so that your brain and that association clicks into gear quickly. 8 is persistence. So persistence is really the ability to put in consistent effort, to focus while we're continuing to work towards goals in spite of obstacles or setbacks or a lack of immediate rewards. We want to make sure that we are able to stay focused, overcome those distractions, that we have the resilience that we face. Number one, a lot of times, it's resilience through boredom. Hey, I don't love this task. This one is not engaging for me. Is it difficult? Am I able to have some resilience through that? And then adapting strategies to achieve that long-term objective. It's key in productivity, and then just really successful task completion. And what you want to do with persistence is really strategically place and engage with rewards after the completion of each task or subtask. Something that's going to give you that pleasure response. And we have also that's outside of the assessment that we are going through today, but there's another, it's called a reinforcer assessment that we use, that we have designed, that allows you to identify, like, what are these sources of rewards for me? And a lot of times it's this amazing source of information to know XYZ works really well to boost me up and keep me going. And now you're outsmarting your brain. You're training yourself. When I do this, I get this. And it's you taking that behavior management to the next level and using that information about yourself so I can continue to get the dopamine I need to focus, to also feel that motivation and continue on with those tasks. 9 is self-understanding. So self-understanding refers to your ability to recognize your own strengths, your weaknesses, and how this impacts your own actions and how it impacts the actions of others around you that you engage with. And so this is huge, and it makes sense, just from the definition, why this would influence and why this would be why this would be the number one skill and area that the best leaders are strong in, is that they understand themselves and they also understand those around them. Because when we have self-awareness, and we've started to develop that, and that's pretty strong, now we have awareness of those around us, our teams, our organizations, and it builds from there. It involves cognitive process, emotional responses, our thought patterns, behavior patterns, a lot of what we already just talked about and defined. It also involves reflecting and using personal experiences, our values, and really stating what is that, taking the time to put that into words, at least for ourselves, and maybe it's journaling or just thinking and processing through that. And then also, what are the beliefs that shape our actions and reactions? Along with that, what are the installations that we are bringing in from our family of origin and our upbringing and our environment that is influencing our awareness, our reactions? So individuals that are strong in this area, they can accurately assess their abilities, much more accurately than those that aren't. And then they can seek support that is beneficial to themselves. They know exactly what that is. They can seek and modify behavior modifications. They're basing a lot of their feedback on self-observation, as well as those that they know who to ask for that feedback. And they're able to reflect on this in an internal way that then fuels their next steps and informs their next steps. So they're evaluating their personal growth on a regular basis. They are evaluating their decision-making patterns, and they're noting that. They are able to make informed choices and maintain those interpersonal relationships successfully. And so that would be being able to maintain those relationships in the workplace with their teams and their colleagues, as well as their relationships outside, and then client relationships. This is huge. So self-understanding is huge for development when you're thinking of somebody that has interactions with other team members and with clients and customers. So our tip is really log those self-observations, send feedback or receive feedback, request feedback often, and then continue to do those reflections. I emphasize enough the logging, because we think we remember, but we want to look at at what time did this happen? How was this informed? And how often? I can't tell you how many times I work with teams and clients, and the perception that's held in the memory is so different than what is logged and what we pull out in those logs. And we start doing the calculations of really how frequently does this happen and in what intensity. So logging and collecting data in intervals is important. 10 is time management. I love time management. I love working in time management. So time management is the ability to plan, to really allocate your time effectively. And there's a tool that I will be sharing here as well that I absolutely love using it with clients and teams, so that we have awareness of what does it mean to allocate time effectively and prioritize those tasks. We want to manage how one spends time. So maximizing productivity. So are we choosing to do a specific task during the time of day that I know my focus is going to be the highest, and I'm maximizing on that, and I'm moving those meetings that are naturally engaging to others when I'm starting to come down from that, because then it's going to keep my productivity going, and my attention and my time management is being addressed as well. It involves really accurately estimating that task duration. And that's, again, from the tool, the tip that we have for this one is that task prioritization guide. It brings in the theories of the time awareness ratio. And this is going back to logging what is your the ratio at which you process time. So time management is prioritizing your tasks, managing how one spends your task, maximizing on that, and then also looking at the task duration, setting realistic due dates based on that, planning for future events. And one of the things that I talk about with the time awareness ratio, and I think we have time where I can go into this just a little bit. What you're going to do is I don't know if we have a link to share. I'll just share it probably maybe after in a follow-up email. But what you do is you pick specific tasks that tend to repeat. Like I do this every week, or I do this type of task every day. And you say, I predict it would take me this much time. And then you actually log and start collecting self-observation data of how long does it actually take you to do that. You calculate the ratio. And now here you have a figure that you can use to apply to your planning, so that when you say, yep, I've got that project, I'm going to complete it by Friday, you know that you actually do have the amount of time. Or let's say you are in a position where you're billing directly based on time for a client. If it takes you more time, you are billing inaccurately as well. An example, I had a client, I'll give you two. One was the client, actually, when we figured out the ratio, it was at 1.25, meaning like when 1 minute passed, it was actually slightly over a minute. And so when they told me, oh, this would take me 60 minutes, we knew that that wasn't an accurate prediction. And so all of the weekly schedule designs were off by quite a bit. And we had to readjust that based on the ratio. Once we did that, it was a much more efficient process, and it was very accurate and easier to communicate that out to the team, easier to communicate that out to clients. I had another client who was working within, she and actually the whole team, they did more of like consult billing to the client, and was under billing because she would work through tasks very quickly because of her processing, her time awareness ratio, and she wasn't logging that correctly. So there was loss of money and loss of revenue. All right. Last is working memory. So working memory is your ability to hold information and then manipulate it within your mind and your brain, in mind with thinking about a task, completing a task. So be able to take in the information, hold the information long enough so that you can apply it. It involves remembering multi-step instructions, recalling relevant details, making decisions based on this information that you're holding. And so it's essential when you're looking at complex, multi-step problem solving, decision making, which is, it's a lot of our jobs, a lot of our daily life is working memory. And the great thing about working memory is that it is like a muscle. You can work it. And if you don't work it, it also isn't as strong. And so our tips are really about making sure that you establish a routine that's helpful for working memory, but also engaging in activities, even games. I bring this up, even games that use working memory are going to help you strengthen that muscle, and then you can transfer that into your work life as well. Things like patterns or numbers, and where you have to, or even like reading a recipe and then saying, I'm not going to go back to my recipe until I go through those steps, and then I'll check it. And then try to do a few more steps the next time. All right. And then I just want to do a quick check. And I don't know if we can throw that poll up again. Did anybody get through or need the link again before we go into kind of a discussion? And then in the chat, while I am adding these folks, yes, if you schedule a meeting, you can do both. You can do a meeting, you can do the email. Totally okay to do both. Okay. And then if there's any questions, because the next thing that we're going to go to is if there's any questions on just executive function in general or topics that you would like to touch on for tips. And then I'm going to make sure everybody gets this. Okay. And then if you're doing the scheduling, while I'm doing this, actually is another, if you're doing the scheduling with me, make sure you type in the notes that free EF so that I know it's from here. I think the link is also labeled as such, but I want to make sure that it is put in there. And then the next one that's going to pop up is for feedback. If you can send that to me. And I actually might just, for time-wise, because I don't know if this is sending or not, I might follow up directly with these folks that have said that they have not gotten it just after we wrap up. All right. Okay. And then if you can give me some feedback, you scan this, you use the word inclusion. It's going to let me know, inform me on how this training went, if there's anything that we should change along the way. And then again, I just want to say those that haven't gotten it, I'll circle back with you when we wrap up here too, if you want to hang around. Otherwise, I can follow up directly after too. If you haven't, for the one-on-one interpretation and the results, the options again were to email, to put your name in the chat, to respond to the poll. You can book a call. And then contact-wise, these are all the mediums you can connect with me at. LinkedIn is a really good one. I'm on there quite often. There's also Instagram and direct email or phone number you can call or text. LinkedIn is probably the quickest though, too. All right. Let's see. And then let's see. Can we put that poll up again? I just want to see if we have a difference or if they still haven't gone through. This delayed response is not what we like in sending off into the internet abyss, but I'm going to try it again. This one. The great things about these types of assessments too is they're such a great springboard for conversation. All right. September, Melody, did you get one? Can you just put in the chat? And then Monica, I'm working on yours. Let's see. Okay. I'm just waiting on a response. I do see it went out. I'm going to resend them. September Melody. And then let's see. Yep. And then let's do thank you for the link. Go ahead and click the link that's in the chat. And that should get you a time. And I was doing, who else was I doing? All right, almost good. All right, I am sending, you should all have them in your inbox and we will follow up. If you do not have it, I want you to please send us an email, but we also will be following up as well. So if it slips your mind, you can reply back. Thank you all for joining today. Take care.